Right. So let us start today's class. Are you being able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Are you in slide number 10?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So last day we started with the problem of hardware software co-design. We started by saying that the embedded systems design has three main phases: modeling, design, and analysis. In modeling, you generate a formal specification of the functionality that you want to implement for the embedded system. It tells what you want. Along with the functionality, it also specifies the properties that the specification is required to satisfy. Properties with respect to, for example, timing, reliability, power, area, etc. So this gives you the modeling. After you have done modeling, you come into design. You come into design, which we said deals with the structured creation of artifacts, meaning that we now go from behavior to structure. So behavior is what you want to do, and structure tells you how you want to do that. It gives a structure to the behavior, how that behavior will be implemented. That is what I mean when I say it tries to give a structure to the behavior. And how does the behavior given structure? By, say, allocating different types of hardware devices to run, hardware processors to run the tasks or behaviors with respect to the model. So the model will be represented as tasks or programs, and that will be executed on hardware devices or processors. So that is a structure. If multiple tasks are executing on the same processors, you need a scheduling algorithm to specify the exact order in which the tasks will be executed on that processor so that everybody can meet its demands on time. So this gives a structure to how the tasks will be scheduled on the processor, and hence that is also a part of the structured creation of artifact. Also, that is a software mechanism that you have used for ordering the tasks on the processors. Similarly, you need scheduling algorithms for scheduling messages on the communication bus so that the tasks on the processor receive their data at the correct time and they can execute smoothly and meet their demands on time. So you need to also correctly schedule the task on the communication network or communication bus. That is also again another structured creation of artifacts. So design deals with the structured creation of artifacts. But the first step in design, as we discussed last day, is that given the model is ultimately boils down to a task graph representation, where the tasks are code blocks, and graph. Why is it a graph? Because you show interconnection between code blocks. The flow of control between code blocks gives the total functionality. How will the end-to-end, how will an end-to-end model function? By defining them as macro level tasks. All the models are each task is defined by its own model, and how control flows between the models of different tasks that specify the the task graph of a controller, say, that you want to design. Okay, so given that task graph structure, the first step in the design process, the task graph structure is obtained at the end of step in the design is to do what? Is to assign these tasks onto hardware or software based on their computational demand, area demand, reliability demand, etc. Flexibility demand, constraints on design cost, etc. We discussed all this last year. Hello, are you being able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So then how do you, so then we were deciding as to how do we go about. The one important point that we said among many other things that we said is that software design, the moot point is that software design is more flexible, less in terms of cost. However, the same in functionality when implemented in hardware has more cost, requires more cost because of higher design cost, higher fabrication cost, etc., but is much more performance efficient. This is what we said. So based on that, based on this introduction, we went through the steps of hardware software co-design. What did we say? We said that the behavior is first represented in its internal graph model, and then for each behavior, for each model of a task, or for each task, we generate the hardware description language code and the C code. Both we generate. Because if the task may be implemented as software or hardware, if it is implemented in software, we need a compiled version of the C code or a Python code, etc., and generate machine instructions for the general purpose processor on which it will execute. If it is finally implemented as a hardware, then we have to describe that functionality in terms of its hardware description language, generate a high level, do a high level synthesis corresponding to that hardware description language description. So the compilation of the hardware description language, the first part of the compilation is high level synthesis to generate a digital design for the the functionality, and that digital design gives you an idea of the hardware cost, maybe the hardware area cost. So after generating the HDL and C code for each task, you do a compilation as well as a hardware synthesis. At the end of this process, for each task Ti, you generate a software cost SI for that task and a hardware cost HI for the task. So for each task, you generate a hardware cost and a software cost. For example, the software cost could mean the software execution cost. That means because the software is slow, it will require some amount of execution time, some significant amount of execution time on the processor. Hence, it can be defined. One simple thing is a software execution cost SI. For the hardware, area is important because the hardware area and the design is important. Higher the area, higher is the design cost, higher is the cost of fabrication generation of the chip. So area cost for hardware is important. Another thing you can say is that software on a general purpose processor, but for each hardware device you generate, you require an additional chip and an additional area. So from that aspect also, HI is important. The area cost for the task in hardware is important. Okay. So the point is that you generate for each task a software execution cost and then hardware area cost. Given this, what we said is that we do the hardware software partitioning based on an objective function which considers multiple aspects, weighted function of multiple aspects, for example, area, delay, power, etc. We also talked about this last day. Then we looked into into a bit more detail as to how do we determine the delay corresponding to a single task. I am in slide number 12. Are you also in slide number 12?
11.
Hello.
11, sir.
11. 11. Now I think you have moved to 12, no?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
but yeah, you are actually a bit delayed, but okay. So with this introduction, we come to the first formulation. The first simple hardware software formulation. So this formulation, what does it involve? It takes as input a set of independent tasks. Sorry, it takes as input a set of independent tasks, not a task graph. We'll take a task graph later. For the beginning, we will take a set of independent tasks. For each task we have a hardware cost and a software cost as generated before, as we told. Now, given that we want to determine whether that task Ti, for each of that task Ti, will be implemented in software or hardware. Now, to decide that, we formulate this problem as a constraint satisfaction problem, CSP, here at the bottom. Now, this constraint satisfaction problem revolves around a set of decision variables, and we have one Boolean decision variable for each task Ti. This Boolean decision variable can take values 1 or 0. So Ti has a Boolean variable yi, which is set to 1 if the task Ti is implemented in software. If task Ti is implemented in hardware, yi equals to 0. Okay, this says. And then what does this CSP tell you? The CSP tries to define the following problem. It attempts to minimize the hardware area cost subject to the fact that the software area cost should be less than equals to capital D. What is the scenario for which you are having this? You have a single software general purpose processor, and you want to, so therefore, because you have a single software general purpose processor, if you want to minimize the total software execution cost, what will you do? You will minimize the total time taken by the tasks in software. Okay, so this is given by the constraint at the bottom. So yi tells you which task. So for all those tasks which are implemented in software, for them yi is 0. Sorry, yi is 1. And so yi.si gives me the software execution cost of tasks which are implemented in software. And summation yisi gives me the total software execution cost of tasks that are implemented in software. Now, the tasks which are not implemented in software, for them yi equals to 0, and therefore 1 minus yi equals to 1. Therefore, summation of 1 minus yi dot hi tells me the hardware cost or the hardware area cost of all tasks that are implemented in hardware, right? So yi will either be 1 or will be 0. If yi is 1, it cannot be 0. So how does constraint satisfaction problem proceed? It allocates a set of valuations to the decision variables. Now, a particular valuation of the decision variable gives a certain solution. So given a certain set of valuations of the decision variable, each of the yi values has either taken a value 1 or a value 0. Now, in that particular solution, how will you estimate the hardware cost of the solution? By this summation 1 minus yi dot hi. And how will you determine the software cost of that solution? Summation yi dot si, summation yi dot si. Now, what do you want in this problem? You want to minimize summation 1 minus yi dot hi subject to the constraint that the total software execution cost should not be more than capital D. With this understanding of the formulation, we also told that this problem is complex. Why? Because any of the particular valuations can be an optimal solutions, and given n tasks, you have 2 to the power n different combinations of valuations, each of which could be an optimal solution. So the number of possible optimal solutions is exponential in the number of tasks, and hence this is a complex problem. Now, such complex problems are solved in different ways. You can have optimal solutions, like you can apply a search technique, which we will see today. You can apply a CSP and use a CSP solver, which internally uses again a search techniques. You could have heuristic fast solutions, and we told when to use what in last day, and we could also use a stochastic solutions, which are statistical solutions. I think we discussed this last day, right? We discussed all this last day, right? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So then let us go into search based optimal solutions. So how does search-based optimal solution proceed? Search-based solutions proceed by generating the state space of all possible moves. So it generates a state space of all possible moves. So first we need to understand what a state space is. So we will see that. Keep that question in your mind for the time being. Let us see the first three steps. The first three things that has been written in this slide. Let us read and then we will understand the first three things first and then we will come back and see the next two things. So the first three things is create a state space considering all possible moves. Every feasible leaf node of this state space holds a solution. The path from a feasible leaf node to the root node enumerates a solution. Let us see what these 3 points mean. Okay. Now see this. See the state space. This is the figure here shows a partial state space of the problem that we described. Of the problem that we described. So this is the problem that we have on the right top, and this is a partial state space tree. So state space is a tree of possible solutions. Each leaf node holds a solution. This is what we told. So at the beginning, the state space begins by having a situation in which you have not decided anything for any task, which is this at the beginning, the first node. Now you have two possible options for the first task, either y1 equals to 1 or y1 equals to 0. These are the two possible moves for the first task. For each move of the first task, you have two possible moves of the second task. For example, let us say you have chosen, you have decided y1 equals to 0. Now for y1 equals to 0, you have two possible moves on the two sides. y2 can be 0 or y2 can be 1. The left side of the state y1 equals to 0 is the state. This state tells me the situation in which y1 is implemented in hardware, but y2 is implemented in software. Whereas the right state of this one says that it tells the situation in which y1 and y2 both are implemented in hardware, and the decisions for the future states are still not known. When you go further, let us now see the extreme right leaf. What does this say? This says a situation, this tells a situation in which all tasks y1 to yk, if there are k possible tasks, when you have k tasks, for all k tasks y1 to yk equals to 0. That means all are implemented in hardware. And see that this is a leaf node and it holds a solution because it holds a valuation for each task. What is that valuation? All y1, y2, y3 equals to 0. Everybody is implemented in hardware. So this is a solution. And who holds the solution? A leaf node. What does the other leaf node here tell me? The other leaf node here tells me that y1 up to yk minus 1, all of them will be implemented in hardware, and only the kth node will be implemented in software, given a set of k tasks. Similarly, this is a partial. Suppose you expand this side. What will be these from this one? This one again is y2 equals to 1 and y2 equals to 0. What does this state tell me? What does this state tell me? y2 equals to 1 when both y1 and y2 are implemented in software, and for the rest of the states the decision is still not known. And what does y1 equals to 1, y2 equals to 0 tell me? It tells me the situation when y1 is implemented in software but y2 is implemented in hardware. So therefore you understand that it will be a decision tree of all possible moves, and also appreciate that all the leaf nodes will hold a solution, okay, whether feasible or infeasible. And the state space search actually does this expansion of the state space tree implicitly. That means it does not build the state space tree and then search over it. It explores the state space tree, goes on exploring the state space tree, and the algorithm proceeds in such a fashion that ultimately it explores the complete state space tree and finds the solution. Okay, so it does not build the state space tree and runs the algorithm, but when it runs in the process, it goes on building the state space tree algorithm. It does not draw the state space tree, but the exploration, the way in which it explores, is the building of the state space tree. This is what we mean when we say that the state space tree is being implicitly generated. Okay. With this, I think now the first three lines again we see: create a state space considering all possible moves. Every feasible leaf node holds a solution. The path from a feasible leaf node to a root node enumerates a solution. I think this is now clear. Now, the number of solutions is exponential in the number of task nodes in the DAG. We have already seen that even for this, even for the figure that we saw in the slide, in the previous slide that we just saw, we had k tasks, and how many leaf nodes for k tasks? 2 to the power k leaf nodes, hence 2 to the power k solutions, right? And and therefore, because we have an exponential number of solutions, we need efficient search techniques. Because if we do brute force, we will ultimately end up to find the optimal solution, which we will ultimately end up exploring the entire search tree. We do not want to explore the entire search tree, but still want to find out the optimal solution. How? By intelligently finding out sub portions of this search tree, which is guaranteed not to contain any optimal solution. So we will intelligently prune that part of the state space tree. We will see in the next slides in today's class as to how we do such pruning and find an efficient search algorithm to find optimal solutions to such complex problems. Okay, let's see. Okay, so one more important thing is that to apply the search technique, we will use branch and bound. It will be easier for us to handle the problem if we modify the problem slightly. Not modify, rewrite the problem. And we have to first appreciate that the problem given on top, the minimization problem given on top, is same as the maximization problem given just below it. So what does the maximization problem tell? It tells summation HIYI, meaning maximize summation HIYI subject to the constraint the summation YISI less than equals to D. Initially, it may seem how can this be possible? But understand that let us say that capital A equals to summation HI for all tasks. For all tasks. Capital A is summation HI for all tasks. And let us say, so what is summation? And also see that summation over HIYI is equals to what? Is equals to A minus summation over 1 minus YI to HI. You first tell me that are you okay with me on this one? So what does YI tell me? YI is equal to 1 when the task is implemented in software. So what does summation, what does this LHS of whatever I have written, what does this LHS tell me? It is the total hardware cost of tasks which are implemented in software, right? Now, what did I tell A? A is what? A is the total hardware cost of all tasks. Because why can I have this? Because for each task, I had found out the estimate of the hardware cost. For all tasks, I had found that at the beginning, right? So I know what this capital A will be. I will have this. If I have this capital A, and I also know what is the total hardware cost of all tasks actually implemented in hardware. Now you see that the actual, if the actual problem is of minimization, it is equivalent to maximizing this whole thing. So if you want to minimize this, you want to minimize this part. You want to minimize the hardware cost of all tasks that are implemented in hardware. Because the total hardware cost is constant equal to capital A, it is equivalent to maximizing the hardware cost of all software tasks. Are you with me? Have you understood this concept? If yes, I will proceed. Otherwise, I will explain again. If you have a problem. Anybody has a problem on this? Yes.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, if there cannot be a part where both hardware and software code thing can be done. So,
Right.
means I am saying that it is 0 or 1. मतलब it is totally shifted towards software or totally shifted toward hardware.
Correct. 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 I am not saying that for these tasks, I am implementing that in hardware. But if I am not implementing that in hardware, it does not mean that I will not have this estimate of HI. Because as part of the initial process, I had found out, I had compiled and also found out did an hardware synthesis and found out the HI and SI values of each task. I had found that out. Is it not? If I had done that, I cannot, you are true in saying that I cannot implement a task both in hardware or software. Yi tells me all those tasks. Yi gives me all those tasks that are in summation Yi gives me all those tasks that are implemented in software. But that does not mean I cannot have a mathematical value of the summation, right? Hi.yi. Those tasks are implemented in software. But I can find the hardware values of that because I have found out that estimate in the previous step only. Any doubt on this?
No, sir, no, sir. And sir,
No.
later I understand that you are subtracting the software part in the hardware part.
Correct. So
Okay.
what am I subtracting? I'm subtracting the hardware part from the total cost.
Yes, sir. So, sir,
If I
sir, I
the total
understand.
cost is constant.
Hello, hello.
Yes, sir. Sir,
Sir, I understand this that if there is a block in which both hardware and software part is done, so we are only calculating half part. One means hardware part different side and software part different side. Sir, is
right.
this your explaining?
Yes. So a
Okay,
task
okay.
will either be executed on a general purpose processor or the task will be implemented as a digital circuit and circuit synthesis done generated on a hardware on a silicon die. Either it will be put on a silicon die and implemented as a circuit, or it will be run as a software code on a general purpose processor. That is true. What I'm all saying is that for each such task, I have found out both the hardware cost and the software cost. Minimizing the hardware cost essentially means maximizing the hardware cost of software. Is this okay?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes. So I'll proceed. So given this, we will now look at the branch and bound solution strategy. So how does branch and bound solution strategy work? How does branch and bound solution strategy work? So we do a state space expansion. The state space expansion starts at a state when none of the starts are allocated. So all tasks are unallocated. We saw that the root node was the state in which none of the tasks were allocated. Now we make a move by choosing one of the tasks. So we choose Y1, then Y2, then T1, then T2, then T3. And what were the possible options for T1? Y1 equals to 0 and Y1 equals to 1. The possible moves for the first task. For any decision for the first task, we do go for the second task. Fine. So we make a move by choosing one of the tasks at any given step, which means at any given state, we have two possible options. Allocate the task in hardware or allocate the task in software. These are the two possible options. Now for any of those possible options, branch on all possible options on the state reach through the move. If this is a very important point to understand, just keep this in mind if you do not understand immediately, but we have to understand by the end of the class today. Branch on all possible options on the state read through the move if and only if the current based solution cost is less than the upper bound at that state. So what do I mean by this? At any point in time, the algorithm holds the current best solution cost. That means whenever you are, say, exploring the search space tree, and suppose you have reached some leaf node, then you have got some solution, and it will have a cost in terms of the value of the objective function, that is the cost. Whenever you reach one leaf, you will immediately get a solution. Initially you won't have any solution, but you explore and find out one leaf, the first leaf that you get, which gives you a feasible solution. That means you have got a solution. You, at any point in time, the algorithm holds in a global variable the value of this current best solution. So the first solution is the only solution, therefore the current best. Now, if you go to another leaf node and find another solution which is better than the current best, you keep that solution as the current best. So you erase or delete that old solution and you make the current solution, because the current solution is better than the old solution. And this is the best solution found so far. You take the new solution and put in that global variable. So that global variable which will be defined as CB, or the current best. That global variable at any point in time holds the best solution at any given time. So therefore, when you are at a given state, at an intermediate state, you will have some value of the current best solution. Okay. Now, if you have a maximization problem, as we have here, then what we want to find out? We want to find out whether we find this thing. What is the upper bound on the cost that can possibly be achieved by exploring further states from this state? Understand what I'm saying carefully. I am not exploring right now. I am not explicitly exploring. I am at a given state. I am trying to find a mathematical upper bound estimate through some heuristic quick method. But the important point is that it should be an estimate of what? Of the upper bound on the cost that I may possibly ever get by exploring the subtree from that state. Now, how I will get that upper bound, I still don't know. That is what I will learn in the future slides. But let us say I have some mechanism, a quick mechanism of finding out an upper bound on the cost that I will get by exploring the unexplored states. So there are many unexplored tasks. What are the unexplored states? I have not taken a decision for many tasks. That is why it is an intermediate state, not a leaf node. A leaf node has a valuation for all tasks. Now, if I am at an intermediate node, there will be tasks for which I have still not taken decision. All those tasks for which I have not taken decision, I will try to find an upper bound of how much cost they can deliver. Now, because this is a maximization problem, I will try to find an upper bound. Okay, how I will do that, I will come later. But you try to understand this part, this less than part in between. Try to understand it right now. So I have got a current based solution, and I'm saying that I will only go and explore the subtree from the current state if my current based cost is less than the upper bound. So if my current based cost is less than the upper bound, then I can possibly get into the subtree and finally get a solution which is better than the current best. Understand that if this condition is not true, that means the current based solution is greater than equal to the upper bound, then there is no possibility of exploring this subtree and get a better solution. In that case, I can prune the exploration of that subtree. This is what I mean by pruning. How I will prune? Don't tax your head now. Just understand that if the current base cost is greater than equal to the upper bound that is achievable by exploring the unexplored tasks from this state, if it is greater than equal to, there is no possibility of getting a better solution than the current base solution by exploring this subtree, and hence I need not explore this subtree. Hence, you can kill or prune the exploration of that subtree. Okay, so this is what it is saying, that if this condition is not true, then I prune or kill the exploration of the subsequent search tree. If you have not understood this concept fully, I will take an example and then you will understand. Don't need to bother right now. Okay. Okay. But before I take the example, I will go a bit more deeper and talk about depth first branch and bound, on which my example will be based. So there are various types of branch and bound, which I will discuss a bit later. But I will first discuss here the solution approach on which my example from the next slide is done. So which is depth first branch and bound. It is a branch and bound mechanism. And how does it explore? By holding the states, holding all new states in a stack structure. How does it use a stack structure? Again, I will tell that in the example, but understand that depth first search, depth first branch and bound is different from breadth first branch and bound and others by having a LIFO structure or a task structure as the main data structure. Okay, all newly generated states will be held in a stack structure. The goal state holds a valid solution for every task. A goal state, right? A goal state, any goal state holds a feasible solution. So what is the definition of a goal state? In depth first branch and bound, leaf node which holds a valid solution or a feasible solution. What do you mean by a feasible solution? For which the constraint, anyone is a valuation, but all valuations are not feasible. Why? Because the constraints may not be satisfied. So all the solution, that is a leaf node, which holds a solution or evaluation of the task for which all my constraints are satisfied, is a valid solution, and that solution, that leaf node, becomes a goal state. What is the optimal goal state? For which the hardware area cost is minimal, or I can say in other words, because I have changed this to a maximization problem. What will it be? For which has maximal hardware area cost of software tasks. Because I have very carefully changed the problem implementation. I have, instead of minimizing the hardware area cost of hardware tasks, I have changed that problem into maximization of the hardware area cost corresponding to the tasks which are actually implemented in software. Right? This is what I have done. So this is what is the optimal goal state. Now, at each state, I will determine an upper bound. So now we will mathematically find out how we determine this upper bound. We will now mathematically determine how we find out this upper bound. But don't tax your brain too much. Try to understand this. We will go into the example and explicitly see how this is done. But go through the names of the variables and what they mean. Try to remember that. So I have three important variables or functions: gn, hn, and g-10. So what is gn? The actual hardware cost of tasks that are already allocated to software. So if I'm at an intermediate state, then I have a set of valuations of already allocated stuff. This is not the root state for which I know nothing. I am at an intermediate state. So I have already decided on the allocation of a few tasks, and for a few tasks I have still not decided. Now for the tasks that I have already decided, that which of these tasks I will implement in software, for all those tasks I have an actual hardware area cost. So GN will hold the actual hardware area cost of tasks that are already allocated to software. G-10 will hold the actual software execution time cost for the current state. That means for the tasks which are actually allocated to software. So G-10 is the total software cost of tasks implemented in software. GN is the total hardware cost of tasks again implemented in software. So this is what G-10 and GN and G-10 are. And then we have this HN, which is very important. H upper bound on estimated hardware cost of the software task of reaching the goal state from the present state. So this is an upper bound of currently unallocated. This is an upper bound on the achievable cost of the currently unallocated tasks. So how do you get this upper bound? See how we get this upper bound. You understand that exploration is an exponential thing. Exploration and actually finding the solutions is exponential in the number of tasks. Now we will see that upper bound is an easier mechanism. It is not an actual exact solution, but it is an upper bound. But that upper bound, what we have here is a from the task, and we can find an upper bound through a linear search. We generate a sorted list of the HI and SI values. Now you see that this sorted list can be generated once at the beginning of the entire algorithm. Why? Because for each task, before the start of the algorithm, I already know their HI and SI. So why is HI divided by SI important? I have constraint on SI, this capital D. That means SI acts as a resource bound. SI is the execution time, but it has a bound capital D. So what I want to do, I want to maximize HI value of which for the tasks which are implemented in software. So HI by SI gives me the hardware cost per unit software cost. HI is the hardware area cost per unit software execution cost incurred. You can mathematically think in this way, right? So if I have a sorted list L, which is of HI, so first task in that list and which is sort of non-increasing order. That means decreasing order of HI values. Then what do I have? The first task gives me the highest hardware area per unit of cost incurred. The least. This task, I will eat up the least amount of resource from capital D and get the maximum hardware benefit because I want to maximize the hardware area of tasks implemented in software. So now given a bound on D, now because I have executed partially, what is my current available time? D minus G dash 10, right? Because G dash 10 gives me what? The actual software execution cost. What the time before deadline expires? D minus G dash 10. Now D minus G dash 10 is my available execution time. Using that amount of resource, I want to maximize hardware. Now I want to generate what? An upper bound. If I how can I generate upper bound? I simply task in terms of their HI by SI values and take the task from the beginning of this sorted list. Now let us say that let us define a position K. This K is different from my state space. You have any question? Anybody has a question can ask. Somebody has a question? No, yes. Otherwise
Sir,
also I will go to the example. Yes.
your voice is very much breaking, sir.
Breaking.
Yeah.
So up to what you have clearly heard? Up to what you have clearly heard? After that, I will tell again. Because of this internet issue, I cannot do anything, but the only thing that I can do is repeat. You can just tell me up to what have you clearly heard?
So the second point, a goal state hold varied.
What? Okay, goal state. You have not understood what an optimal goal state is. An optimal goal state is the one with the minimal hardware area cost. You know what a goal state is. The leaf node which contains a feasible solution is a goal state. What is an optimal goal state? Among all feasible leaf nodes, the one with the least hardware execution cost, hardware area cost of task implemented in hardware, or the maximum hardware execution cost of task executed in. So that is the optimal goal state. Now we find an upper bound function Fn. That Fn is actually has two parts, Gn and Hn. So Gn, among that Gn is an actual cost. What is that Gn? Actual hardware cost, hardware area cost of tasks already implemented in software. And Hn is a bound, upper bound on the hardware area cost of software tasks that are unallocated till now. I will find an estimate that if I implement these future tasks in software, what is the maximum possible hardware area cost that I can derive? This upper bound I am trying to find out. Okay. Is my voice still breaking, or you are being able to hear?
No, sir,
Hello?
not breaking now.
Not breaking now. Okay. 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 So then you have understood. I am expecting you have understood what Gn and G-10 is. If you have not, you can ask me. If yes, if you have understood what Gn and G-10 is, please say an yes. Then I will proceed to HN. Only Gn and G-10. Have you understood? Hello. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay. No, Gn and G-10. Have you understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now I will go to Hn. So Hn is an upper bound estimate of the hardware cost of software tasks which has still not been allocated. Okay. How do we generate that is the question. How do we generate that? Now we generate a sorted list of presently unallocated tasks. Now, if this is an intermediate node on which I am trying to find Hn, we must appreciate that some of the tasks have already been allocated and some of the tasks are unallocated. So for those tasks, I have already obtained the total hardware area cost of software tasks and total software execution cost of software tasks in Gn and G-10. Now, for the unallocated task, because this is an intermediate node, I generate a sorted list. Now, this sorted list is generated initially at the beginning. At the beginning of the algorithm, what I do, I generate a sorted list like this. How and why can I generate a sorted list like this? Because HI and SI values are known even at the beginning of scheduling for all tasks. So initially, I will take the tasks and sort them in terms of their HI by SI values in increasing order of their HI by SI values. Is it clear? You have to give me some feedback frequently because I'm not understanding whether you are being able to hear me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I understand.
Okay. But still you need to give me a feedback just for my convenience, because otherwise I'm not understanding whether you are being able to hear. Okay. So now after you have this sorted list, you understand that if you take the first task in this sorted list will give me the highest hardware cost by incurring the least software execution cost. What I want from the remaining unallocated tasks, I want to allocate those tasks in software which will give me the highest corresponding hardware cost. Now, what is the remaining hardware execution resource that I have? D minus G-10. G-10 is the already incurred software execution cost at the current state. D is my bound. So my remaining resource is D minus G-N. In using this much amount of resource, what is the maximum amount of hardware cost that I can have? This is the question. Okay. Now, now let us say that how this Hn is found out. Let us say that that Lk denotes the kth element of this list. Lk denotes the kth element of list K. And let us say that when I take up to the kth element, then now come to this equation Hn equals to summation j equals to L1 to Lk Hj. Come to this equation. In this equation, the first term on the RHS, what does it say? It does j equals to L1 to Lk to Hj. Let us say that up to Lk, if you take the tasks, then summation over S is less than equal to d minus g dash n, which is seen at the bottom line. You see that summation j equals to L1 to Lk Sj is less than equals to g minus g dash n. So you are summing up the hardware cost of all those tasks whose summation is still less than its resource boundary. So what is your resource bound? D minus g dash n. Now, if you take up to the kth element of from this list L, what happens is that the total software cost is less than this bound. So when up to the time it is less than this bound, you just add up the entire tasks. Now you know that if you take the k plus 1th task, what happens is that the total resource is overshoot. That means if you take the if you take the k plus 1th task, you cross that bound. So what do you do to get the upper bound? You consider this resource partially. How much do you take from this k plus 1th task? You take the hardware cost, partial hardware cost of the k plus 1th task. How much? How much? This much. You find out what? So what is the remaining task do you have? What is the remaining software resource do you have after considering the kth, after taking up to the kth task of list L? How much remaining resource do you have? D minus g dash 10 minus j equals to L1 to Lk Sj, which is the last term in the Hn equation. In the Hn equation, see the last term. What is the last term? B minus g dash 10 minus j equals to L1 to Lk Sj, right? Now, what does this last term tell me? It tells me, this last term tells me this, that after taking up to the kth task in list L, what is the amount of remaining resource do I have? Software execution resource. That is d minus g dash 10 minus j equals to L1 to Lk Sj. Now, using this amount of resource from the kth task, how from the k plus 1th task, how much hardware cost can I gain? By unitary method, H now entire second term, the H plus 1 divided by S Lk plus 1 into D minus G dash 10 minus J equals to L1 to Lk Sj, where D minus G dash, this one gives me the remaining resource, and HLK plus 1 divided by SLK plus 1 gives me the hard area resource per unit software area resource. So if HLK plus 1 by SLK plus 1 is the hardware resource per unit software resource. So if I have D minus G dash n minus summation j equals to L1 to Lk Sj amount of resource remaining, what will be the hardware area cost that I will be able to get from the k task? L k plus 1 divided by S L k plus 1 into this unitary method. So what is the upper of this equation? If you more or less understand this, it is fine. If you may have some confusions. If you want to confusions, you can ask, but explain this more clearly through an example. But still, if you want to ask some question here, you can ask me. Were you being able to hear this clearly without any yes or no? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello? Yes.
Hello,
Yes.
sir.
Hello? Yes.
Sir, I am not able to get this d minus g dash and minus summation of that. It is the remaining resource of software which we have to implement on hardware.
No, 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 no.
Uh, sir,
Remaining
please explain.
software resource, remaining software execution time, d
Yes.
minus g dash n minus j equals to L1 to Lk Sj is the remaining software execution time. Remaining after what? You are allocating software execution time because what you have said, you want to implement an upper bound. That upper bound you have said that what you are doing, you are taking the tasks one by one from this list L and you have taken up to the kth task. Why have you taken up to the kth task? Because these tasks gives you the highest HK, HJ by incurring the least SJ. Why? Because these tasks are sorted in terms of HI by SI. So they give you the highest H value per unit S value. And remember, both this H and S are for the same because you are generating HI by SI. And what are you trying to do? You are trying to maximize hardware area cost for those tasks which are implemented in software. And these tasks incur the software execution time. Because these tasks are implemented in software, they only incur the software execution time. And for those tasks only you want to maximize the hardware area cost. Why? Because that effectively minimizes the hardware area cost of tasks implemented in hardware. That is why you want to maximize the hardware area cost of tasks implemented in software. Now what you're trying to find out, you want to find out an upper bound on the cost estimate. Now, okay. To understand this, let us not waste time here anymore. Let us go to the example. And if you still don't understand in the example, we will take this matter up again because I will again do this calculation in the example. Is that fine with you?
Yes, sir, because
Understand,
it is very
doubts, you will
confusing
ask.
here. So you
Huh?
can, yes, sir, it is very confusing here. You can go to the example.
Okay. 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 So let us consider a set of 4 tasks. And my software execution cost bound is 15. So what I'm trying to find out, that what is the actual problem that I'm trying to do? I want to minimize the hardware execution cost such that the software execution cost is not more than 15. What is my assumption? Implementation in hardware incurs negligible software time. So their software execution times are negligible, but they incur hardware area, which is premium. What is my advantage of software? It is flexible, but it incurs zero area because it all are implemented on the general purpose processor, zero additional area, but it takes significant amount of time to execute. Now, it so happens that my embedded system has a bound on the maximum time it can take. And that is so what I want to minimize the hardware area cost such that the total time incurred in software or by the software task is less than equals to 15. For that, what I want to do, I want to maximize the hardware area cost of those tasks implemented in software. This concept, if you are understanding, then you will understand things easily. If you have not understood this line, you ask me last time, if you are still having a confusion of what I mean by saying you want to maximize the hardware area cost of tasks implemented in software. If you are not understanding this, ask me. Or if you have understood this, give me a go. Yes. Am I okay to go? Is this okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So see, I have 4 tasks. The 4 tasks have hardware area costs T1, T2, T3, T4, 10, 10, 12, 18. And their corresponding software execution cost, because I have profiled this task and done a hardware software profiling. So I have found both the hardware cost and the software cost, and the software cost are T, which means that if T1 is implemented in hardware, it will take 10 units of area. If it is implemented in software, it will consume 2 units of execution time. If T2 is implemented in hardware, it will consume 10 units of area. If T2 is implemented in software, it will consume 4 units of execution time. Similarly for T3 and T4. Without loss of generality, I have ordered these tasks in the order of their decreasing HI by SI values. So you see that for task T1, the HI by SI value is 10 divided by 2, 5. So the hardware area cost per unit software resource incurred is 5. So for every software execution time incurred, software resource that it eats up, for every unit of software resource that this task eats up, it gives me 5 units of hardware area. Why is this? Why looking in this way is important? Again, because I want to maximize the hardware area cost of those tasks which are implemented in software. That is my objective. Okay. For the next task, the software execution cost is 4. My hardware area is 10. So my HI by SI value is 2.5. For T3, it is 12 by 6, which is 2. For T4, it is 18 by 9, which is again 2. So this is the sorted list: T1, T2, T3, T4. So what is the procedure by which I want to generate the solution? I go on generating the state space. I generate bounds wherever possible at each node. At each node, I generate bounds and we work towards possible solutions. So let us see. So at the beginning, at each state, I will hold the following information. As I told, what are the information that I hold at each state? GN, G-10, HN, current based solution, and FN. Now, what is GN? GN is the hardware area cost, actual hardware area cost of all those tasks which are implemented in software. So nothing has been implemented initially, so this is 0. And G-10 is the software execution cost of those tasks implemented in software, that is also 0. What is HN? No task has been allocated. So what is HN? So D is 15. I know D equals to 15. So the total available resource is 15. And this sorting is done initially at the beginning of the algorithm. So see how I generate this upper bound. I have not generated anything, any solution till now, but I can generate the maximum hardware cost that I can possibly get by expanding all tasks. How? I will take the first task T1. So when I take the first task T1, I get how much do I get? A hardware cost of 10 and the software cost incurred is 2. So remaining resource is 13, 15 minus 2. So when I take the first task, I 10 and software cost incurred is 2. When I take the first 2 tasks, what is the upper bound? And you see that by using up 2 amounts of resource, I cannot get more than 10 amounts of hardware area. Right? I cannot get more than 10 units of HI by just incurring 2 units of SI if I do not take T1. So T1 is the most profitable. So I take T1 and then take T2 and then take T3. So when I take T1, T2 and T3, how much software cost have I already eaten up? 6 plus 4 plus 2, which is 12. How much hardware cost have I got? How much hardware? Yes, how much hardware cost have I got? 10 plus 10 plus 12, which is 32. So after taking the first 3 tasks, I have got an upper bound of 32 by eating up the software resource of 12. Now how much resource do I have? 3. 15 minus 12. 15 minus 12 is my remaining 3. Right? Now using up this 3, what is the maximum additional hardware hardware cost that I can gain, that is given by 18 by 9 into 3. How did I get 3? Because after this I have the remaining resource is just 3, and I am taking this partially. I am taking this up partially. After taking all that, going on doing all that, I just remain with 3. And what do I get? 6. So what is Hn at this point? At this point, what is Hn? 38. Now the question is, why on earth did I take the T4 partially? Do you have this question? If yes, then ask me. If you do not have this question, then very fine, I will proceed. You understood that out of T4 I did not take fully. I just found out if I use up 3 units of software resource from T4, how much hardware cost will I gain? So if I use up 3 amounts of software resource from T4, which is the maximum available software resource, after giving the resources to T1, T2 and T3, I just have 3 amounts of resource. And if I give that to T4, because I cannot give to T1, T2 and T3, and the next best is T4, I can only give it partially, which is 6. Now, why did I give partially? Because what I want to generate is mathematics. This is not actual generation. This is just an upper bound. I want to get a bound. What is the maximum that is possible? Don't think of this as actual allocation. Just understand that this is an upper bound, and if you're able to appreciate that yes, this is an upper bound, I cannot get more hardware unit cost by using up 15 amounts of resource. I cannot get more hardware area cost. This is sufficient. This understanding, if you have got this understanding?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So the current solution is still 0 or -1, whatever you want to take. Why? Because the current base solution is 0, because I have not got any solution till now. What is Fn? Fn is Gn plus Hn. Now Gn is 0, Hn is 38, so Gn plus Hn is 38, so Fn is also equals to 38. So this is what is the first state. If you have understood up to this, I will proceed, because the next ones will become easier. Right? Okay. Hello.
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes. So now next what will happen? Next. Will be this two. Y1 equals to 1 and Y1 equals to 0. Okay. Now which one I will expand? Y1 equals to 1. Now here is a Y. So now think of the data structure. We said that we are storing these states in a stack, which is a LIFO structure. Initially, the 0th state was in the stack. This state was in stack. I took out this element from the stack and expanded that. By expanding that on the first task, I got 2 options. So the 2 options are here. Y1 equals to 1 and Y1 equals to 0. Now, just because I have taken 1 first to the left and 0 on the other side, this convention I will follow for all tasks. Hence, in my LIFO structure, the last in first out structure, the first element that to be considered next becomes Y1 equals to 1. Okay. This will be extracted next. When this is extracted, what will come? The next 2 tasks, which is Y2 equals to 1 and Y2 equals to 0. Okay. Okay. If this is okay, then where will they be inserted? This has been extracted. So then after you have got to this step, after you have got to this step, what will be the structure of the stack? The first element will be y1 equals to 0. The second element will be y2 equals to 0. And the third element will be y2 equals to 1. Because y1 equals to 1 has been extracted. If you have understood this, tell a yes. If you have not understood, ask. This is the structure of the LIFO stack after you have expanded up to y2 equals to 1 and y2 equals to 0 on the left side, whatever I have shown. If you have understood, please say a yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Repeat,
So
sir,
now,
please.
repeat. Okay.
Hello. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, can you just tell me what have you not understood exactly?
Sir, the stack part.
The stack part.
Y10, Y120.
Right. So see, I am saying that these states in the previous slide we said that how will the algorithm proceed? The algorithm will proceed by operating on a stack. Actually the algorithm will proceed unless the stack is empty. Initially the stack will have only one node, which is the initial node, the zero with the violet 0 that I have shown here, the initial state, the dummy node that will be there in the stack. Now I will extract that and expand. Expand by what? I'm saying that I'm building the state space. So what am I building? All options on the first task. Now it's so I can take any task, but it so happens that no preferable. And let us say forget about it. I have randomly chosen say task 1. I could have done just take it in your head that I could have chosen any task and still got an optimal solution. Only thing that could change is that the time taken to generate the optimal solution may vary depending on the order in which you choose the task. So let us say that you choose for the sake, because I have done the example like this, at least for that reason, you just take this, that I will choose task 1, then task 2, then task 3, then task 4, this order. So if I choose task 1 first, then the two options for task 1 is either y1 equals to 1 or y1 equals to 0. Either task 1 will be in software or task 1 will be in hardware. Now, because I am using a LIFO stack and I have extracted the dummy node, who will be getting inside the stack after this extraction? Y1 equals to 0 and y1 equals to 1. And let us say I have put it in this order. Y1 equals to 0 on the right, y1 equals to 0 on the right, and y1 equals to 1 on the left. And because, so what is stack? Last in, first out. So whichever, if the stack is open this side, open on the left, then y1 is on the top of the stack. If the stack, or let us say if I build a stack like this, like a container, then at the bottom you have y1 equals to 1, and on top you have y1 equals to, sorry, y1 equals to 0, and on top you have y1 equals to 1. And that is why y1 equals to 1 is the top of the stack, and you extract that. Now when you extract, what do you get inside the stack? Y2 equals to 1 and y2 equals to 0. So this gets extracted, and then who gets inside? Here you have y2 equals to 0, and on top of that, on the top of the stack now you will have y2 equals to 1. I'm sorry for the bad handwriting because
Yes, sir. Fine,
because
sir. Fine, sir. I just understand.
okay, you understood, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So let's proceed. So then what I actually do, I am not showing the stack. Then I expand the first. I go to y1 equals to 1. So what in that state, what information do I again calculate? I have actually put y1 in software. Y1 equals to 1 means I have actually put y1 in software. So the hardware cost of this software allocated task is 10. So to 10. Any confusion here? You are G dash 10 equals to 2. Because for task, it's software is hardware execution cost is 10. So Gn equals to 10. What is HA? So what amount of resource remaining right now? d minus g dash 10. Now by using 13 amount of resource, you understand that you will choose T2 and then choose T3 and then partially choose T4 and get a HN value of 28. If you are with me on this, then say yes, understood. Otherwise, I will break and do the calculation again. No? Should I do the calculation?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So you see that so the order, because I've eaten up, I have already used task 1. Then who are there in the sorted list? First T2, then T3, then T4. These are my tasks, unallocated tasks in the sorted list. So who is the first one in the sorted list? I have available resource equals to 13. Now I take the first task in T2, eat up 4 amount from this 13 and get this value 10. Then I use, then I take T3 because this is the second task in that list. So I take that task T3, get plus 12 and use up 6 amounts of more resource. I take 10. So then I remain with 13 minus 10 equals to again 3. And I have eaten up task 2 and task 3 and got 22. So how much more do I have? 3 amounts of resource. And I will use partially T4. How much? 18 by 9 into 3 again. That is equals to 6. So 6 plus 22. 6, 22 plus 6 equals to 28. So HN equals to 28. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
Yes, sir.
yes.
Sir, in this case, if our HN plus GN had not come out to be 38, then we would have stopped going ahead with this branch.
HN plus GN.
Yes, sir. Had not been equal to Fn, that is the maximum upper bound, then we would have not
No, no.
gone at.
If Fn is being calculated from this. Fn equals to HN plus GN.
So Fn was the absolute maximum bound, right? Which we had calculated at the dummy node. And Hn is the current maximum which I can obtain
No,
from.
no, no. HN is the bound, is the upper bound corresponding to the unallocated tasks. Understand this. I understand your confusion, but get this once because this is an important concept. HN is the upper bound. So I have explored till this state, and I have a set of unallocated state below this y equals to 1. For those unallocated state, I am calculating this upper bound HN. This you have understood, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. GN is the software cost of task already allocated. So that is an actual cost, right?
Yes, sir.
So now if you consider the path from root to any leaf through y equals to 1, path from the root to any leaf through y equals to 1, what is the upper bound? GN plus HN. Fn is also an upper bound, but part of this upper bound is an actual cost GN. But because HN is an upper bound, so HN plus GN is also an upper bound. GN is the actual cost of coming to this state. HN is the upper, GN is the actual cost of coming to this state from the root. HN is the upper bound of the cost of going to any leaf from this state. So Fn is the upper bound of any path from the root to the leaf through this state.
Yes, sir.
Should I say this again?
No, sir, I got it. Sir, if you could move a few slides before, sir, you had said that if my upper bound, say it was something like this, that if my upper bound is not equal to the total upper bound, then
Are
we
you
will
in slide number? Are you in
report.
slide number 19? Slide number 19.
Not yet, sir.
Uh, let me see when you come to slide number 19. When I am the situation will get over, I don't know. I'm still waiting. In slide number 19, I have written this Fn equals to Gn plus Hn. But I don't know why are you not shifting to slide number 19. It's very irritating. You are still not gone to slide number 19, right?
No, sir.
You are stuck at slide number 23. Now you are at slide number 19, it seems.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So you see the fourth bullet point. There is an upper bound function Fn in every state, which is Fn equals to Gn plus Hn, where Gn is the actual cost and Hn is an upper bound. Did you want to mention this slide, or you had some other thing in mind?
Yes, sir. Sir, that point, but I'm still at slide 23. I don't know why. But sir, yes, I wanted to mention that point. So you had said something related to the clipping of the tree, that if it does not meet the absolute bound, then we clip off that part of the tree and do not solve further.
I have not clicked anything till now. Let us go back. I don't know why you are stuck there, but let us proceed and do the complete example. I just have half an hour more, so let us complete the example because I want to complete the example. By
Yes,
that
sir.
time, if you don't understand, we will again take this up. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So next, after I have done y1 equals to 1, and because I have this LIFO structure, I will get to y2 equals to 1. That will be extracted out of the stack. So I will first extract the dummy node and then insert y1 equals to 1 and y1 equals to 0, extract y1 equals to 1, then insert y2 equals to 1 and y2 equals to 0, extract y2 equals to 1. So after I have extracted y2 equals to 1, what do I have? Gn equals to 20 because I have already allocated. Are you in slide number 24, all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. So then y1 and y2 has been allocated in software. G dashed n equals to 6. Why G dash n equals to 6? Because for T1 plus T2, the total software execution time cost is 6. The total time taken by these two tasks together when executed on a general purpose processor is 6 time units. Correspondingly, if these two tasks were executed in hardware, they would have taken 20 amounts of area. This is what I mean when I say Gn equals to 20, G dash 10 equals to 6, Hn equals to 18. Now, do I need to calculate this anymore? Do you understand why Hn equals to 18? I only have task T3 and T4, and I have resource. What is the amount of resource? 9 amount of resource. By using up 9 amount of software execution time resource, the maximum amount of so unallocated tasks are T3 and T4, the maximum amount of hardware area cost that I can gain by using up 9 amounts of software execution time resource is at most 18. Am I okay with this, or should I calculate?
Yes, sir. Okay.
Okay. So again, you see that Fn equals to Gn plus Hn is 18 plus 20, which is 38 in this case. So we proceed again. Now, after proceeding at y equals to 2, it explores y3. y3 equals to 1. When it explores y3 equals to 1, G dashed n equals to, if you are at slide number 25, then you see that Gn equals to 32, G dash 10 equals to 12, Hn equals to 8, Fn equals to 38. And still the current based solution, the global current based solution variable is 0 because no solution has been generated. Now you see here that I cannot allocate Y4 to software. Why? Because I have actual hardware resource. How much is actual software execution time resource? How much is remaining? 15 minus 12, which is 3. But T4, if allocated, will require T4 if allocated will require how much? Will require 9 units of resource. So though I will put those two tasks, that means Y4 equals to 1 and Y4 equals to 0 both on the stack, and pick up Y4 equals to 1, I will see that this Y4 equals to 1 is infeasible. I will see that Y4 equals to 1 is infeasible, right? Are you in slide number 26?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then I will also see that there are no more tasks to expand. So the next one in stack is Y4 equals to 0. So Y4 equals to 0 is my next element to explore, right? And this is possible. So if I go to Y4 equals to 0, I get my first solution. And see, what is the characteristic of this solution here? GN is 32. The hardware area cost of tasks actually allocated to software is 32. Why? Y1, Y2, and Y3, these three are allocated to software. Their total cost is 32. And the G-10 value, that means their corresponding software cost is 12. And Y4 is allocated to hardware. So your current solution value is 32. So the current base value, because you are maximizing, your current base value is 32 and you have got your first solution. And your solution is Y1, T1, T2, and T3 in software. This is what your solution is. Now, after you have done this, there is no more task to explore. So who is next in stack? Y3 equals to 0, right? Y3 equals to 0 is your next element in stack. Are you with me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Y3 equals to 0 is your next element in stack, but now your current solution is known to be 32 and not 0. Current based solution. So, right. So you come back to Y2 equals to 1 and then explore this Y3 equals to 0. At this point, let me go at the previous point. So see that when you come back to Y2 equals to 1 here, your everything else, what is your position here at the current time? Y1 and Y2 are in software. Y3 and Y4 are not known till now. What you will do? But your current base solution is 32. At this point, you are moving to Y3 equals to 0. Now, when you move to Y3 equals to 0, what do you have? Gn is 20, G-10 is 6, Hn is 18, current base solution is 32, and Fn is 38 because it is 18 plus 20. Okay. After this, who is there on stack? Now, Y3 equals to 0, we'll explore Y4 equals to 1 and Y4 equals to 0. These two will be inserted into the stack. And who will be extracted next? Y4 equals to 1. Are you with me? Yes? Yes.
Sir.
Okay. So when Y4 equals to 1 is extracted, then what do I get? I get a GN value of 38. Why? 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 Because Y1 and Y2 and Y4 are implemented in software, which is 10 plus 10 plus 18, which is 38. So GN is 38. Now, why? How did I get upper bound of 38 before? Not in this way. I did T1 plus T2, T3 and got this one and partially took T4. That gave me 38. Now, this actual value could very well be less than 38. It does not mean that the base solution has to be equal to the upper bound. It has so happened for this example that whatever we got as the upper bound, that is also your best solution. But this is not the case everywhere in general. Typically, the best solution, the best actual solution will be less than the upper bound. Okay. So here for as a special case, we have got Gn equals to 38 and your whole resource has been taken. G dash equals to 18. Why? Because you have eaten up 4 who are in software? 4, 2 and 9. 9 plus 4, 13. 13 plus 2 is 15. So that is why G-10 is 15. Your current base solution is now updated from 32 to 38, and your solution is T1 in software, T2 in software, T4 in software, and T3 in hardware. Who is the next to be expanded? Y4 equals to 0. Now let us see what happens. See that now what happens when you try to expand y4, means y4 equals to 0 was in the stack and you extract, but does this, do you need to further explore y4? No. Why? Because you know that your current base solution is 38. You know that your current base solution is 38 and your upper bound is also 38. So your current base solution is not less than the upper bound. It is equal to the upper bound. And we said that if my current base solution is not, if my current base solution is not less than the upper bound, we will prune, because there is no way by which I can explore the subtree, subsequent subtree, and still get a better solution. So you don't need to explore y4 equals to 0. Understand that till now, for all solutions, for all the cases that we expanded, we got the case where the current base solution was less than the upper bound. Even when we expanded y3 equals to 0, even when we were in the previous state, even where we were in the previous state, why did we expand y4 equals to 1? We expanded y4 equals to 1 because the current base solution was 32 and my upper bound was 38. In slide number 29, we expanded y4 equals to 1 from y3 equals to 0 only because your current base solution there was less than the upper bound. But now when you are expanding y4 equals to 0, y4 equals to 1, you expanded that. That's why when we are expanding y4 equals to 0 and now your upper bound has, sorry, your current base solution has changed, you do not expand anymore. Now let us say after you have come to this place, who is your next one in the, who is your next element in the stack? Y2 equals to 0, right? Because y2 equals to 1, with y2 equals to 1, everything has been explored. Y3 equals to 1, y3 equals to 0, y4 equals to 1, y4 equals to 0. For each of them has been explored. So now, who is the next one in the stack? Y2 equals to 0, right? And even your current base solution now is 38 and your FN is 38. Do you understand? Why do we prune y2 equals to 0? So this whole subtree below y2, you do not need to expand anymore. You save this search, but you still guarantee that you will definitely get the upper bound. Are you with me here? That even without searching, you have been able to guarantee that you will never lose your optimal solution. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
But we may miss out on other alternative optimal solution.
Once
Hello.
more, please. Once, please.
Sir, we may miss out on any alternate optimal solution in this case, but we have at least one optimal solution.
Right. You cannot get a better solution. Alternate optimal solution, yes, you can miss on alternate optimal solution. Very right. But you will
Yes.
never miss on a better solution. Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you have told me a nice point which I forgot to tell you. I do not have actually one global variable which keeps the best solution. I have another global list which keeps the enumeration of that global solution. So when I got this also, this path, how do I maintain this path from the root to the leaf for the best solution? That is maintained in a global data structure. Along with CB, I have another global data structure, which maintains at any point in time the global best solution. This I suppose at the bottom I am telling you T1, T2, T4 is the best solution. This global list is also updated when I update the best solution, right? Because I not only need the value of the solution, I also need the what that solution is, who are in software and who are in hardware, right? So thank you for pointing this out. Okay. So next what will happen? Again, the other side of y1 equals to 0 also is not required to be explored. Right? So this whole subtree you do not need to explore. And you still, therefore, you have now explored the entire solution. Why? Because your stack is now empty. You have nothing more to explore. Your stack is now empty. Are you with me? Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So therefore, how do we implement this algorithm? Either as a recursive function or in a while loop which iterates until this stack is null. So it starts with the dummy node in the stack and it goes on exploring the search tree, doing a bound, generating branching and bounding, branching and bounding until the stack is empty. Okay. So now the final solution, which is maintained in the global variable and the global data structure, the final solution is T1, T2, and T4 in software and T3 in hardware. Have you understood this algorithm? Any questions anymore that you previously had?
No, sir.
No. So now before ending, let us discuss a few points. Why is it called branch and bound firstly? Because you are branching and you are branching on all possible options at a given state, right? For the next, you choose a task, you branch on all possible options on that task, put them in stack. So that is the branching part. And you have a bound. Why? Because at each state you are trying to generate a bound as to when you will explore the subtree and when you will not explore the subtree. Are you with me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. Next, why is it called depth first branch and bound? Because we are going depth first. Because this is a LIFO structure, we are continuously, and LIFO, the last in that list is the first one to be taken out. Last in, first out. That is why the one which is last entered into the stack is the first to be taken out. That is why we are moving depth first. Against, there could be an we'll see what are the pros and cons. Suppose if you would have implemented this this data structure of newly generated states as a queue and not as a stack, what would happen? It would become a first in first out list. So at the beginning, after the dummy node, you will enter y equals to 1 and y equals to 0, and you will enter that into the queue, y equals to 1 and y equals to 0, and the first you will extract the first in, which is y equals to 0. Whom will you bring it in? Whom will you bring it in? So let us think of this situation. Let us think a bit more on this situation. Okay, let us think a bit more on this situation. Let us think that we are having a queue. We are having a queue. So after exploring the first state, I am in a queue, and the queue is also open on this side. I am in a queue. I have generated y1 equals to 0 and y1 equals to 1. And let us say I will take out. So the first I can take out anyone. because they are entered together. Or let us say if I say that this one is first in, then then this one y1 equals to 1 y1 equals to 0 will be the one to be expanded. When I expand this, I will get y2 equals to 0 and y2 equals to 1. So then what will happen? I will have something this. So okay. Okay, sorry. I am jumbling up a bit, but this is what is happening. See, it is first in, first out, right? So what is happening? You have done y1 equals to 0 first, and then you have y1 equals to 1, and then y1, y2 equals to 0, and y2 equals to 1. Right, this is one in the queue, and who will be taken out? Because it is first in, first out, y1 equal to 1 will be the one to be taken out, and not y2 equals to 1 or y2 equals to 0. Are you with me? Because this is a queue, after you have taken out y1 equals to 0, the next one to be taken out from the queue will be y1 equals to 1. Why? Because this is the first in, first out list. Are you with me? Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes, sir. So then what is happening? You are essentially exploring level by level and not depth first. And therefore, it is breadth first, not depth first. Because it is a level by level kind of a search, it is breadth first and not depth first. Are you with me on this also? If yes, then I will move into what is a best first search. So in best first search, you do not use a stack or a queue of the newly generated states. Instead, you have a priority queue. The priority queue is sorted based on FN values. Okay, let us stop before I come to that. Before I come to that, let us discuss about the differences between depth first and breadth first. First, understand that both depth first search and breadth first search are going to give me optimal solutions. Do you appreciate this internally thinking that yes, whether I move level by level or I move depth first, I will get an optimal solution. Are you with me on this?
Yes, sir.
Yes. But depth first search will typically take much less time than breadth first search. Are you with me on this?
Yes, sir.
Why? Why will it take less time?
Sir, because in breadth first search matlab, uh, it will go level by level. So let's suppose that if the solution is in last level, so it will take much more time. But while in depth first search, we are first moving to the depth, and then what
So, right.
is it?
What you are essentially trying to point is that depth first search very quickly generates a few initial solutions based on which you can compare the upper bound and do a lot of pruning. But when you are doing breadth first search, all the levels have been searched. And ultimately, when you reach the leaf or the first solution, you do not have much more of the search tree to explore. Do you understand? Right? And hence depth first search will do much quicker. Why? Because it will generate the initial current best solutions very quickly, against which the upper bounds can be compared, and possibly you could have a lot of pruning of the state space. Yes, no? Understood, not understood?
Yes, sir, under
Understood. So with this, let us come to best first search. The best first search is not always best first in terms of everything. It also has pros and cons. Let us see the pros first. It is the basis of a very well-known AI algorithm, artificial intelligence algorithm called A star. So which works in this way. So how does it work? Instead of ordering in depth first or breadth first order as a stack or queue, it keeps in a priority queue which is sorted, or let us say a binary heap which is for which the key is fn values. So let me say the con first, the drawback first. So therefore, even before exploring the states, you have to generate the upper bounds and keep the and generate the upper bounds for all states which are in the priority queue. Because based on those upper bounds, that means the fn values, you will keep the priority queue sorted. And at any point in time, you will explore or sorry, you will explore next which state, the one whose fn value is highest for the maximization problem and whose fn value is lowest for a minimization problem. Meaning that if you have a maximization optimization problem, then you will keep a max heap and you will generate upper bounds for fn values will be upper bounds. And if you have a minimization problem, then you will use a mean heap and your fn values will be lower bound. And obviously when you prune and when you explode, that condition will also be opposite for maximization and minimization problem. That is the only difference. And this essentially is the A-star algorithm and nothing else. So therefore you have also learned an AI algorithm today. Okay. The next important thing here is that subsequently your next lab assignment will be based on this algorithm: depth first, breadth first, and best first. I will give you a problem on which, so you have to understand this, and I will ask when we do this, when we do the lab, I will tell you a few more nice things, properties of best first search. So one nice property which I will not prove, but I'll just say now, is that the first solution that you get in best first search is also the best solution. How do you get that? I will not say now, but the strategy is exactly same what I told you, the algorithm. If you implement this algorithm, you will see that if you correctly implement this algorithm, that you are at any point in time, you are exploring similar to whatever algorithm I told. You are generating all possible options. For all possible options that you generate, before trying to explore and extracting those nodes from the data structure, you will initially only you will generate all the fn values and keep the data structure sorted or structured. Say if you have a mean heap or max heap in terms of that fn value, and go on exploring in this way. The rest of the algorithm is just same, the A-star algorithm. Okay. Now let us go into something else. One more thing. So the question is, how would the data structure holding newly generated states of the state is changed for each case? That I told you just now, we discussed in slide number 36. How does the choice of the heuristic function affect the search? How does the choice of the heuristic function affect the search? This is an important question. Let me take this from here. I will take this, and how this algorithm is generic for different embedded systems problem, how nicely it can be applied to various embedded systems problems. We will come to next day. I stop here today. Okay, so next class is on Wednesday, 5 o'clock. Right? Hello.
Okay,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. Okay. So thank you. Bye for now. Good night.
Thank you, sir.